Is it just me, or does it seem like the older I get, the less and less time I spend with people? I don't know. I've been thinking about this recently, and I've tried to think of the different reasons why I'm spending a lot more time on my own. I mean, is it because of winter? Is it because I'm getting older and making friends seems to be a little bit more of a mission than I remember it being? I have no idea. So for the last couple of months, I'd say I've spent a ton of time, hundreds of hours on my own. And there was a period of that time where being alone made me feel weird. I felt like I was lonely, because there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely, right? So the reason why it was somewhat disturbing to me is the fact that I really remember myself as being a very outgoing person in general. So if you don't know, I'm originally from South Africa. That's where I spent most of my life. And in South Africa, I was the guy who wouldn't shut up, wouldn't stop talking, wouldn't stop going out and meeting a bunch of different people. I mean, that's just the type of person that I am. But after having moved here, there are certain things that have changed a little bit. And I don't know, I don't know if I should be concerned about it, or if it's just the natural progression of life in general, whether it's the nature of where I'm at and the people around me, or whether I am changing as a person. These are some really strange questions, right? Well, some really deep questions, because I've noticed that if I don't think about this specifically, in my head, I'll just believe that I'm just some weird loner, and the reason why I spend time alone is because no one wants to hang out with me or something like that. That is not the case. So in terms of trying to figure out why I'm spending a lot of time, I've had to cross certain things out. Or one of the things that I've noticed that has changed about me ever since moving to this side of the world is the fact that I'm less, can I even say I'm less outgoing? I think I'm the same type of outgoing, but the people around me are less outgoing. So whereas in, say, South Africa, it was quite normal to be able to chat to people in very different settings, right? You don't have to be at a bar or at an event where it's created to speak to people. You could speak to people wherever you were at. It doesn't mean that you have tons of friends. It just means that you have a lot of people that you can exchange words with. But on this side of the world, that was very different for me. I remember jumping on the bus for the first time and sitting next to someone and being so excited to talk to someone and being like, hey, how are you doing? Are you having a good day? I remember the other person was a lady, and she was very gracious and kind, but I remember her looking at me like, yo, what in the world is going on? But as time went on, I'll jump on the bus and greet the bus driver and be like, good morning or good evening or whatnot. And by seeing some of the responses I would get, that part of me I'll still say thank you to the bus drivers and stuff, but I wasn't going out of my way anymore, right? So that feels like it blunted a little aspect of myself that enjoyed that spontaneity of going out and speaking to people and that sort of stuff. And at first, when that began to happen to me, where I felt like I began to pull back when I jumped on the bus, I went out of my way to look for empty spaces. If someone is sitting in a bus seat that is practically full for now, unless I've got no other options. So I began to notice those sort of changes in my life, but I just chalk those things up to, hey, I'm just fitting into the culture here, the way things work in this country. That feeling began to be a little too real for it to simply be me trying to adapt to the culture. Because for example, when I jumped onto a bus, I would honestly feel my heart sink when I would look around and see that every seat already had at least one person in there. Like, I would genuinely feel my heart just like sink into my stomach, and I'll be like, damn it. And the opposite of that is when I jumped on a bus and I saw it was empty, or there was an area where I could just go and sit. I would feel my emotions lift up, and I was like, yeah. And even things like, I would be in my apartment here and I want to leave the house, and I could be in a rush for work, and I put my hand on the doorknob. I'm just about to turn it open to go into the corridor, and then I'll hear my neighbors talking as they are also out in the corridor waiting for the lift. No matter how much in a rush I am, a lot of the time, I would rather wait for them to go so that I don't have to interact with them. I used to wonder if there was something wrong with me, if I'm being infected with something. Like, I was never like this, but I think it's a combination of a bunch of different things. In one aspect, I do find that it takes a lot more energy to speak to a random person here. So I have to be in the frame of mind to want to get a conversation going, or to say the right things to make the other person feel comfortable. It's just a lot more weight on my shoulders to interact with people. So a lot of the time I'm just like, yeah, I would rather not put in that energy. That's why if I go to a party or something, or a bar where I know people are willing to talk and stuff, I don't mind that. I can go out and do that sort of stuff. Whereas in other places around the world, even America, when I went to go visit my family in Chicago and LA, Americans are very outgoing, maybe a little too outgoing sometimes, in my humble opinion. But that was easy to get the conversation off the ground. So a lot of the time I find that I would rather avoid those conversations simply because I'm just like, yeah, what a mission, And I noticed different things like that in my life, how they began to manifest. That part of it is a little too ridiculous for me, so I've been fighting against that, where I'm like, no ways, I'm not that antisocial. So I've been trying to break some of those ways of viewing, or some of those ways of acting, because I think that's a little bit too ridiculous. But I would sometimes feel the emotion quite strongly, and I've genuinely found myself asking the question, is there something wrong with me? So those are some surface level things, but now things have gotten even deeper, where I am now spending a lot of time in my day-to-day life on my own, outside of work. So it's Saturday now, and guess what I'm doing? I'm sitting here speaking to the camera instead of being on my phone trying to text people and trying to do something fun. So I personally don't feel like there is something wrong with me, but it has given me pause and made me realize that perhaps what is happening to me is just the natural progression of an adult human being. I don't know. You guys can tell me how you handle all of this. So I find myself in a bit of a conundrum right now, because it's not that I don't have friends. I do have friends. I have got people that I connect with, but I don't feel like I have a community of friends. I don't feel like I've got a group of people that I can always contact and go hang out and do stuff, where I'm continually invited out and that sort of stuff. But that's not the issue. The issue for me is that I'm quite all right not having that. Like, I'm quite all right not being hit up all the time, people asking me to do stuff. It's not that I wouldn't want it, but I don't mind that not happening. And I won't lie, part of that got me a bit worried, because I had to sit down and ask myself the question, like, am I lonely? Like, what the hell is going on here? It's quite difficult to explain. It's like, when I first moved here and I was looking for friends and people to hang out with, because I knew no one of the things that I would do is I would go out to bars a lot. I'd go out alone very easily, and I would sit down and have a few beers, and during the course of an evening I would end up talking to people, and more often than not I would end up hanging out with people, and it would usually be a really cool night. But that all changed when I stopped drinking. So I'm sure I'll put a link to a video somewhere around here where I stopped drinking alcohol for several reasons. One of them being that I felt like I was using alcohol as a crutch to deal with handling social situations. Now, you might be watching this and being like, yo, Chico, you look like someone who's quite outgoing and can talk to almost anyone and whatnot. And you are right. Partially right. But the thing is that having a couple beers does add a little something to social interactions. They call it liquid courage. You know, you arrive at a bar, you get a beer and you're a bit shy and whatever, and you throw one back, you throw back a second one, and by the third, it's quite easy to just go and talk to people and whatnot. But during that whole journey, there are several things that I noticed. One of them is the fact that after the evening is done, after the hype and the fun and the energy I would get from being around people, I would end up having to go home. That walk home when you are sobering up and you're starting to feel really sick and just feeling really low, and then you end up getting home and you don't even know if the people that you connected with will ever be friends. And I just didn't like that feeling. And so I let go of alcohol, and you know what, to each their own. But after having done that, I find that I go out a lot less now. And going out a lot less has impacted my life in a variety of different ways. I don't know if all of them are positive, but at the very least, I feel physically a lot better and emotionally a lot more steady. It's almost as if those feelings of loneliness that would come upon me, a lot of them were exacerbated by the alcohol, because the way I like to describe it is being drunk is like borrowing happiness from tomorrow, right? I noticed just how low I would feel after a night out, and that feeling would stay inside of me like a pit, like a deep dark pit inside my gut. And a few days would go by, and to fill that void, I would drink some more. So ever since stopping, I've been more focused on trying to learn, trying to better myself, trying to create good routines. And there are definitely things I could try and change and be better at. I've noticed now that I've paid super close attention to learning to enjoy my own company. A few things that I decided that I had to change this year was that one of them was being creative. I've got so many different things I want to do, whereas going out and trying to have short-term fun is great, but it's just so limited in how much happiness and fulfillment it gives me over time. It feels like it's just a short thing and then it's just a memory. I'm not saying those things are bad, but I feel like it's a time of prioritizing things that are a little longer lasting. And if it means that I have to spend a little bit more time alone to achieve those things that give me a longer lasting fulfillment, like creativity and stuff, then that for me is a lot more worth it. Another thing I want to improve is just general knowledge, trying to become more knowledgeable in politics and philosophy and just how the world works, because there's a lot of things happening in the world today that have got me a little bit worried. But to be able to address those things, I have to actually apply myself and start reading books and all that sort of stuff. If you don't know, and I'm sure you do, being in a relationship can drastically impact your quality of life. It can make things a lot better or a lot worse, and sometimes it feels like it's a coin toss, as to the type of person that you start seeing. And there are times in life where you are busy building something and then you get into a relationship and the person adds so much turmoil to your life that it's really hard to focus on things. And I don't want to risk that, and this isn't me talking badly about previous relationships or anything. No, it's just a matter of fact. I feel like I'm in this nice little place where I can focus on myself. I mean, all of this is to say that I believe that life does indeed have seasons. Sometimes we go through seasons where we're not constantly hanging around people all the time. Doesn't always mean that there's something wrong. Sometimes we have to focus on ourselves and the things that we're building, right? Sometimes we have to learn to enjoy our own company. No, not sometimes. I'd say every time. Learning to enjoy our own company is an important tool in not feeling lonely, because there is a difference between feeling lonely and being alone. Feeling lonely, you feel completely isolated from the world and everything else. That can still happen even being around people. So that shows the fact that it is indeed a state of mind, the way we view the world. For me personally, something that has helped me is understanding that learning to enjoy being with myself has taken care of that feeling of loneliness. So I enjoy sitting down and trying to create, learning something, spending time on my own and being all right with that. And the biggest tool in my toolbox is probably gratitude thrown in on top of all of that. I'm grateful for who I am. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful for the people in my life, like my family and my few friends. And the life I'm living, I actively practice gratitude, right? And that for me has changed things. Now, another thing to address is the fact that, hey, perhaps I'm spending, and perhaps you're in the same position where you're spending a lot of time on your own, and it could be it's just because of the nature of the season, like the physical season, it being winter, it gets dark early, it's cold, and it takes more effort to have to go out. It could be that. I'm not sure, but I feel like I've never been in this sort of position in my life before. So in closing, I want to tell you this, that there is nothing wrong with being on your own. Loneliness is a mindset that can be changed. It's always good to learn how to enjoy being with yourself. It's very important, because learning how to enjoy being with yourself is going to greatly help you being around other people. And you don't have to feel bad for not having tons and tons of friends. That's something that I feel like I've always had. But as I've grown older now, I've realized that a lot of the people I thought were friends are actually like good acquaintances, as opposed to people who want to speak deeply with me and have, engaging conversations. And lastly, it is quite all right to spend time waiting to meet a great person that you want to have a relationship with, as opposed to just jumping into something that could affect what you are doing in your life right now. But anyway, these are simply just my thoughts. I'm going through a very interesting time in my life. I hope that some of you watching this might be able to relate to this weird place I find myself in. But otherwise, if you enjoyed my content, I really appreciate you if you leave me a like, and let me know if there's anything else you want me to talk about. Just hit me up in the comments. I'll read the comments and reply to them. So I really appreciate you. Have a fantastic day, evening, or whenever you watch this. You guys are awesome. And cheers. Bye.